You're listening to the Mile Marker Podcast, where we explore trends and innovations in fleet automation and shared mobility, helping fleet-based businesses make better informed decisions and achieve full digital transformation. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Mile Marker Podcast. I'm Angela Simoes, your host, and today we have Adam Seifert, who is Director of Fleet Advisory and Analytics for Inspiration Mobility. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Adam, I know that you started out as a fleet manager and then you moved into a consulting role. So talk to us a little bit about that, and so how you got into it, and then how the role of a fleet manager and a consultant kind of differs, and then some of the things that you're seeing.
Yeah. So when I entered as a fleet manager role can be very challenging, but also very rewarding. And I think it's that dynamic nature of the role that really excited me, that things change, every week. And when you move into consulting, what excited me was the ability to work with many fleets. And so having more time to be able to dig into, well, what are your challenges that you're working on, and to apply some things that I learned from maybe one sector or one fleet to another organization.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So like depending on the kind of fleet, maybe it's a heavy trucking fleet versus more of a consumer vehicle fleet, or just the different purposes.
And I think that specific to that, there are some trends that are across fleets that are attributed to fleets across the industry.
Okay.
But you can also learn from other industries too. And so that's where, when you have this scope of no fleet manager will know less about the organization than their supplier, right? That's what you're there for. You're the expert, everything about your operation and what your needs are. And it's providing that as a source of data to a third party or a consultant who might have other external sources or case studies, and being able to understand where we match the opportunity with the solutions that might exist. Got it.
So give us some examples of lessons from one type of fleet that you have been able to apply to a different type of fleet.
Yep. So when an organization is facing a challenge, that falls on the fleet manager, it's often the first time that they face that. So one fleet that we're working with is working through a merger and acquisition. And that is not uncommon. This is a very common challenge that every fleet manager is facing, that every fleet manager either has faced or will face. But it was unique to that organization. And so understanding, how do I right size, right spec my inventory? How do I bring together the culture of the different drivers, the different organizations, and the right units? And that's where the greatest opportunity for a fleet manager and how you can become most successful is by ensuring that you're constantly connecting and learning, either through a secured, free or paid resource to be able to walk you through that, or other fleet managers, and finding out, who has faced this challenge before and can help walk me through that solution, or knows someone that might have the right approach. Okay. And you're now with Inspiration Mobility, which is an EV-focused fleet consulting company, correct? So, yes. Go ahead. So, fleet management company.
Fleet management company. Yep. Okay, great. And so you were just talking about, whether it's the acquisition and the transition. So what are some of the challenges when it comes to electrification, when maybe some of the merger and acquisition happens, or a fleet company is just looking to make the transition to electric?
So electric vehicles typically are the right solution for an organization based on the goals that they have that they're looking to achieve. Maybe they operate in some sort of area that they have some sort of regulatory compliance, so they don't have much of an option. They need to figure out where they will work for them. It might be because they have some sort of goal where they want to reduce emissions or increase the number of zero-emission vehicles in the fleet, either driven by their constituents, by their senior leaders, or by maybe their multinational fleet, and it's a global goal. The third one is TCO savings. So we're at a point now where, specifically in light-duty applications, but also heavy-duty applications, where there's a lot of good incentive programs out there, where fleets can see reduced total life cycle costs, which, depending on how you finance or lease your assets, you can actually see that in the first year. And so if you're under specific cost constraints, everyone always faces that. But if that's a real initiative for your organization, there's an opportunity for basically every fleet that I've looked at to bring down costs in certain areas with EVs. And so when you're approaching, depending on how you're approaching electrification, really changes, where you start. And every fleet, where they should start is by understanding what is the future of what my fleet job needs to be. I'm buying these assets for 3 years, 4 years, maybe 7 or 10 years or more for heavier assets. And I need to be able to make decisions based on what the future need of my operation is going to be. And so getting a lot of good information on who your stakeholders are, where they think their future needs lie, as well as what is the operational requirements today. So getting a good understanding of, do these vehicles go home with drivers? Do they stay at depots? And what does that mean? What type of home do they stay in? Is it something that would be feasible or, cost effective to have a charging solution for them? Or should they be, the second, third, fourth wave of EVs in my organization? Likewise for depots, do we rent the facility, or is it leased? Or do we own it? How much longer do we have? And is it something that we can simply park and charge at, or there's some other complexity there? Taking that approach to help parse out and prioritize where EVs fit in the fleet today is the most important place on where to start. Because when you have a poor first experience, that's what slows people down. That's what people say, I don't see cost savings.
Right.
This is causing me to have or causing my drivers, stress around their anxiety, around their range, or they won't use these vehicles. It's one of my pool vehicles and no one will grab it for their routes. And we've heard of numerous situations where EVs are parked in front of chargers. And so that way, no one has to see that challenge. And, that's really unfortunate because you're eating that additional cost. You're slowing down the way that your organization needs to adapt to this change and to learn and grow and take advantage of what will become over time more apparent, more easy to access, better understood by your drivers, and drive down your cost.
So I'm curious. So, when like electrification first came on the scene and talk of, transitioning fleets to electric, and there were some initial challenges, right? Things like, okay, where do you source your vehicles, and what's the charging protocol going to be like, and infrastructure and all those kinds of things. So what are some of those initial challenges that have been solved, right? Like, okay, that's not an issue anymore. We've got that down pat. And then what are some of the current challenges that you're seeing? Okay, now we're really dealing with this, right? So, because then follow up to that is be like, where do you see things in like 5 years, right?
Yep. The historical challenges, anyone who hasn't had an EV in their fleet today, you can really take advantage of these things that people learned maybe the hard way in 2020, 2021, 2022. And some of those fleets purchased their EVs before they had the right charging solution figured out. And so I know numerous fleets who ended up returning those EVs and trying to find a new home for them from their supplier, because understanding the charging is something new for fleet managers. We never had to do anything more than just set them up with a gas card. Maybe some people have on-site fueling, but really thinking through, hey, you have an opportunity to have a better fueling experience. You never have to go to a gas station, but that would involve me installing a charger at your home that you plug into at night. And if that's something that works for you, then it ends up being a better experience. But the trip up that happened first is not talking to those drivers and not understanding, getting some of the initial data and collecting that to understand who has the highest feasibility and who would end up having the lowest cost for us to roll these EVs out. So charging has to be, if not part of the initial conversation, it probably has to come first to bring that together. The second piece would be EV model availability. And this is something that has changed pretty dramatically over the past 3 years and will continue to do so over the next 3 to 5 years. There was a limited number of EVs available for fleet use cases in 2021, 2022. Some of this technology was really solid and gave drivers a good experience. Some of it was a little bit more limited. Maybe the range was a little bit too low based on what you effectively drive every day. and that wasn't understood at the beginning, or it wasn't, kind of mapped well. The other piece is the cost of the vehicle and making sure that you get into the right spec. So if you are looking for a full-size electric pickup truck today, not only has that cost come down a bit, but also there are a few options out there for you to look at. Today, there don't exist compact electric pickups. So you're really looking at going up in spec to move to one of those vehicles. That's a challenge that exists today that we don't believe will exist in 3 to 5 years from now, based on what the OEMs are bringing out. Similar in the van category, right?
Okay.
Electric cargo vans, multiple models available today that a fleet can look at that will really do what they need to do. And there's also been good education from the upfitting side of the equation of how those vehicles are different. So you don't end up with a vehicle where you drill into the, where there might be a battery, all of those configurations have been really worked out from upfitting partners. And so there's better understanding across the supply chain of the vehicle of what they require to get to the driver, to be built out, in their charging, and from there on.
That's really exciting. So there's been real progress there. So it's really cool to hear.
There is. There are some gaps today, but that's where...
As there will be, even in 5 years, right? Like you just kind of continue troubleshooting. So sorry.
Oh, no, I think one of the gaps, you just kind of reminded me, one of the gaps that exists on the gas vehicle side today is there is no small van anymore. That was really taken away. None of the major OEMs are making that city van, which was a staple in a large number of vocational and service fleets. And a lot of those fleets had to figure out if they're moving into an SUV, a minivan, a light truck. And there have been some announcements that there might be some movement in that direction, but it's really, it starts with a conversation around what does my fleet need to do, and is there a vehicle out there that can do it today? Those use cases are increasing, but that's really one of the stumbling blocks, is if you start with the wrong vehicle, that you're really catching up from there. Right.
So we're recording this episode from AFLA here in San Antonio, and you're actually speaking at the conference on electrification. So can you give us a little hint about what you are going to talk about, and then what are some of the action items that you're hoping those in the audience take from your talk?
Yeah. Electrification, when done right, can provide a great opportunity for fleets to improve their driver experience, to reach their stakeholder goals, or to bring down costs. But there are challenges with it, and if you don't line that up right, you could end up with really losing out. You could lose in higher costs. You could lose trust with your drivers, with your organization. Right. And so finding ways to ensure success for those initial deployments, and building a cohesive plan and bringing together your team around this strategy is what allows fleets today that we've seen find savings and find greater, more efficient operations. I'm hopeful that people who come to the session tomorrow will take away some of the key items to prepare for, as well as the questions to ask their potential partners. Because more than anything else, this is about partnership. This is about there's very few partners who have had experience across the entire value chain of what electric vehicle operation, infrastructure installation, and driver experience looks like. And so getting smarter about some of those questions on the front end will allow a fleet manager to be able to build a better plan.
Well, and as we said earlier, because there's been so much progress made already, you learn from those that kind of learned the hard way, right? Those questions are already sort of mapped out for them, so they just have to take the best practices and create a good plan. There's no need to wing it anymore, right?
Definitely.
So as somebody that, focuses on electrification and the newest technologies, what are you seeing, or what do you think we will see in the next, 3 to 5 years when it comes to new technologies, or just advancements in kind of the existing areas that we're seeing kind of take momentum right now?
In the next 3 to 5 years, there are several trends and new technologies that we're going to see advancements within fleet. One area will be on the side of safety. There are a large number of fleets where their number one initiative for this year is focused around safety, and it's focused around AI-enabled safety camera systems. And so we know the value of a good safety system and a good safety program, or using telematics to enhance that program. Body repair costs start at $3,000 or $5,000 and go up much more from there. Workers' comp claims can start at $15,000 or $20,000, and more serious claims can significantly exponentially rise. So investing in some of these systems it might not be cheap on the front end when you think about some of the other investments that you've made, but training and bringing down those costs and improving safety is a great opportunity that some of these technologies can afford. So that's one. A second one would be along the lines of automation. Mm-hmm. So we all talked about, I think it was 2017, when everyone got very excited for the first time around autonomous vehicles. And while there are autonomous vehicles on the road today delivering products and delivering people, you should really broaden your approach to automation across the entire interaction of your vehicle and its data with the jobs that your drivers are doing and the customers that they're serving. And so the vehicle is really becoming a bit of a smartphone on wheels. Mm-hmm. And so taking the technology that you have access to, as well as the other tools that your drivers or business partners have access to, and taking time to understand what are the current workflows, the current business requirements that they have, and what are the manual tasks that they're doing, the things that they could be learning on the spot, on the job, while they're moving through their day. And some of those advancements that you have an opportunity to take advantage of could completely change the way some of your drivers interact with their vehicles. And so automation is definitely a big piece on the data side, maybe mm-hmm. on the technology and camera side, but more on the data and the actual administration of the fleet and their day-to-day job. The last piece is electrification. Mm-hmm. It's recent numbers. Ford saw 14% of their total sales in August were EVs. That's growing. That's a growing and large mm-hmm. number. You know, people aren't sure how we can reach 100% over time, but it's becoming inevitable that that many fleet applications will see 50 to 60% of EV sales of total sales being electric vehicles by 2030. And so the question that a fleet manager will need to ask themselves is, where does their fleet stand? Are they in that camp? And when they're starting to make decisions about the total cost of ownership starting to flip for them, where they might start saving money, or they could, they're going to start getting asked those questions. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to play catch up after the fact. So now is really the time to learn. The second piece too is, you can imagine that as there's a growing EV sales market, there's actually a declining ICE resale market. Mm. And so if you're buying these gas or diesel, cars or trucks, you're going to have a smaller market that's going to be purchasing those vehicles at the end of the life. So there's a bit of uncertainty around residual values that will start to appear over time. And the fleet manager, as the in-house subject matter expert, the go-to, really trying to reduce the risk of the organization when it comes to the vehicles, is going to be the person looked to help mm-hmm. plot that path forward.
I would imagine it's a fun position to be in when you're looking at things like electrification and autonomy, because you're having to not only think about, okay, what do my customers need now in order to sort of make that transition or adopt those technologies, but what are they going to need in a year, in 5 years, and what's the infrastructure going to be like, and how much of our society is going to be autonomous, right? Because what I think is hilarious is, I think a lot of people felt like, oh yeah, autonomous vehicles are here, and in 10 years, we're going to be a fully autonomous society. And like that kind of flip just right. will not happen, right?
Right.
We might, be the futuristic movie society in maybe 50 years, 100 years, but I mean,
sure.
it's a gradual progress, right? Like you can't just make the flip, as well as electrification, because you have rural areas, right? You have fleets that are making deliveries or traveling to rural areas. And while the bigger cities and even the suburbs, can more quickly adopt electrification infrastructure, you still have to figure out, okay, well, if I have an electric truck that gets stranded in the middle of nowhere, what happens then? So, I mean, right. I think it's kind of a really fun position to be in. I don't know if you want to provide some thoughts on that.
I think successful fleet managers are typically straddling the line of what is real, practical way to keep my vehicles moving, to keep my drivers happy, to keep my operations team within their budget every day, but also taking the time to understand, to think about what would this look like if it were easy. And so when you think about it that way, it's not just what is a potential future society, but what is a better way to run our fleet, to serve our customers. And you can if you start to take away those constraints of what your not only your day-to-day job is, which there's a lot that you have to get done there, but also what your drivers are asking for. If you take away some of that aspect, then you could start to see where those opportunities are. And maybe you can't take advantage of that right away, but you can start to plan, here's an initiative that I want to propose for next year and something that I want to learn. And if you plan it that way and kind of build the business case with your leadership, here is the potential impact it could have, and here's what I'm asking for you. I think that that constant testing and managing change for the organization is again this other vital aspect of what the fleet manager will need to bring.
And very exciting. Really, really cool stuff. So our last question is a little bit of a change in direction. So I understand you're a busy dad of twins. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So how do you achieve work-life balance, right? Like you've got a busy home life, but you're clearly, very busy on the work front. So do you have a routine where you're like, okay, every Saturday we go do this, or I use a meditation app, or like, how do you do that with your family?
Sure. So first of all, having a toddler-proof doorknob cover is really helpful during the day. Right. But I really
so they're not joining your Zoom calls.
They're sometimes able to break in, and it's usually a benefit when they're there, and they can take us out of whatever we were talking about anyway. But there are a few things that I do. So the first thing is I try to create boundaries, and especially being a primarily remote employee, spending time when I'm working at my desk or in my home office, I try to focus on work. Whereas when I'm with my family or with my friends, I try to be present with them. And I'm not perfect, but even something as small as any family priorities go on the refrigerator, and any of my work or professional tasks stay on my whiteboard by my desk is one step I try to take.
That's great.
The other is about trying to streamline communications. So we've all been in those meetings that could have been an email, and we all send emails or create presentations that could have been maybe even a Teams message or a quick call. And when we're managing multiple projects, your entire week can get eaten up with these meetings. And so finding a way to dial that back and to be more efficient is really helpful. One of my favorite hacks is to send content ahead of time for kind of offline review. It really reduces the back and forth. We all don't need to realign our calendars, maybe delay a meeting when we could have gotten that feedback in a few days. So that's one piece. The other one, which I could talk for a while about, but it really has some really unique opportunities, is using technology like generative AI and ChatGPT. So whether or not it's built in a tool that you're using today and providing you some sort of review or insights, or you're using it as a brainstorming partner, there's really great opportunities that can help not only improve your efficiency, but for me, I use it to help kind of kickstart creativity and innovation.
Right. As often is said, it's kind of easier to start from a draft or to start from something than to start from scratch, right? Yeah. So to your point, generative AI, help me brainstorm, give me some ideas, and then you riff off of that, and before you know it, you've have a whole new set of ideas. I totally agree. I use it every day. It's been like the best thing that's come on the scene in a long time. Yeah,
and I would say that I probably don't use it enough, and I think there's a lot of people who probably don't use it enough. So, and everyone, what's going to work best for you is probably going to be different from someone else. So really get in there and try and test.
Right. So that could be a whole other podcast episode, how fleet managers can use generative AI. I love it.
Let's do it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Adam. This has been a real pleasure.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Mile Marker Podcast. If you liked what you heard today, give us a like, share this episode on social media, and even take a minute to give us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you can join us for future episodes full of insights and ideas to keep the mobility industry moving forward.